Wolves need no armor.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Esports Monies, ESM, Mac10, whatever you want to call me, and welcome to a video you've probably been waiting for a very long time. It's not the cake, but it is. It's I guess an appetizer, or the first part in a series of appetizers, where I'm going to be talking about Lycan. And I thought it would be appropriate to start this series by going over a brief history of what the hero has been, what he is today, how he's changed, and why things are different in 2017 compared to 2014, which is when I really got good at him and when I've played probably in that year probably 80% of all the Lycan games I've played. So one more wiki page I'm gonna need. Dota 2 buildings for Warcraft 3. No. Buildings, towers, tier 1 tower. There's got to be a changelog, right? Okay, here's changelog. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the changelog to Lycan, but as you can see I have a lot of tabs up, and we're going to basically roll through all of these because they're all very relevant. The most relevant is, of course, the hero himself. So, going way back when, Lycan at TI2, so I'll try to make this history lesson brief before I started spamming the shit out of him. At TI2, Lycan was the best hero in Dota 2. He was better than he was at TI5. He was that good. He was, or TI4. He was better at TI2 than he was at TI4, which is where he was banned and picked every single game. And I think that was also the case at TI2. When Lycan came out, it was incredible. You felt like you couldn't lose if you played him right. And then everyone just figured that he was trash and we wouldn't play him anymore, and then people figured out, I really think it was Microsoft, and maybe, I really believe he was the first person to really realize, holy shit, you can do the same things you used to do with him, you just have to do it a little bit differently, and you'll get to the same result. So I forget which patch that was, but the patch where I started spamming him, 6.77, 6.78 were when I started playing the shit out of him. I was still playing a good amount of him in 6.75. This was a decent sized hit. So when they increased the mana cost, that was a decent hit, but they increased his base intelligence. And Lycan is a hero, like I think a lot of heroes in Dota 2, that Ice Frog really has trouble balancing. He's kind of like a Darkseer. Maybe not quite like a Darkseer, that's kind of a bad example, but he's a hero that, maybe a Chen isn't appropriate, I don't know. But he's a hero that Ice Frog really likes, I think, and he wants him to be relevant, but it's very hard to keep him in the game without him being way too powerful. He's someone that requires constant tweaking, because if you leave him alone for long enough, people will either decide he's useless, or if you leave him alone for even longer, someone will figure out a way to make him good again. I really believe that if you have enough time alone with the hero, and I haven't had enough yet, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So his base armor was increased from -1 to 0. So he started at 2.24 armor. I remember reading a Reddit thread that said, wolves need no armor. Now Ice Frog says, wolves need some armor. So 6.79 was where I got really, really, really good, or started to get really good at the hero. This was where I started talking to Microsoft. So this would have been late 2013, early 2014. Do we have a date on this? Yeah, this would have been the October of 2013. So during this period of time, his armor base was increased by 1. Magic resist on the wolves was from 50 to 80, which is a big deal because the big way that they nerfed him following TI2 was that they cut the wolf HP in half at all levels to try to make him a worse jungler. And inadvertently, because his wolves, I don't think his wolves even had 50% magic resistance. I think they had 20 before then. Before there was raised to 50. And so once you cut those wolves' health in half, they could just get killed by AoE so easily when they had no magic resistance. And at first no one really cared because like today I feel like Ice Frog, like the bounce changes that you see that like, oh, this is a huge nerf or huge buff, it's nothing like what we used to see way back in the day. Back in the day, like 2012, 2013, 2014, when a new hero came online, it's like when Centaur Warlord came out, he had like a 69% win rate in all matches. He was that good. Actually, no, it wasn't 69, it was 59. But still, it was absurd. It was way more broken. It was the most broken I've ever seen a hero. And he didn't come down on him as hard, but generally speaking, when there's a hero that dominates the professional scene, at least back in those days, people would be tired of him. There were less heroes in the pool. To keep the game robust, he would stomp that fucker out for a while. So that was a massive nerf, and he was slowly working him back up into relevancy. And Howl's getting buffed here. Shapeshift no longer grants 1 armor, but your base armor's up by 1, so you don't care. And your base attack damage was raised by 5. So overall, this was a buff in 6.79, and this was when I felt that Lycan was just out of control, and he still wasn't popular in the highest tier of play. I think Microsoft had, I think, like 6.80 came out in January of 2014. I'm almost positive January of 2014. Maybe it was a Christmas patch, but I'm pretty sure it was January. Yeah, it was January 29th of 2014. I remember the day this came out, or maybe the day before, reading the patch notes the first time and thought to myself, this is bad because this is going to draw attention to a hero that is already getting good just because people are figuring out how to play him again, and this is ultimately going to end up with him being way too strong. And it did. This was the patch that gave his wolves incredible regen. So this was the patch that gave them 15 regen at the max level, and also granted level 3 wolves invisibility, and the fade delay went from 3 seconds to 1.7 at both levels, so his wolves got a massive buff here. And it's a cool buff and it's a cool idea, but if you could give me the 6.79 Lycan before he had these buffs, he was so freaking strong then because Shapeshift had no cast time and a handful of other changes, I would take that. Actually, maybe I wouldn't, just because there's a lot of item changes that have made him weaker and a lot of building changes, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So Shapeshift health, the health buff from Shapeshift was reduced, Howl duration was reduced, and the attack damage was reduced slightly. This was mostly, the 6.81B change was just to make it so that people were less likely to level Howl level 1 and use it to get better last-hitting power in lane. Shapeshift no longer reduces base attack time to 1.5. This was the biggest nerf he's had since TI2. The increase in the cooldown in the ultimate was pretty big. That's not the biggest deal at level. It's a pain in the ass, but it was a pretty big deal. The increased movement speed was nice, and it was basically just trying to compensate for the 1.5 second transformation time. So it's basically saying if you're better at timing things, the hero is the same or better for you because you're above max move speed and you can catch people with haste runes and do all sorts of crazy stuff. But with the base attack time nerf, when in Shapeshift, this means that it's going to take you longer to land a hit, so if someone's running away from you, you need that increased movement speed to catch up and land the same number of hits. So that's a pretty big deal. God, we're already 7 minutes in this. This is going to be a long video. So, the next thing, Lycan Wolf's Critical Strike got replaced with Cripple. So, Cripple is dog shit compared to Critical Strike, in my opinion. So like the old Lycan Wolf Critical Strike was 170% of the damage, and depending on which auras you have, that can add up very quickly. The Cripple's damage over time is 8 over 4 seconds. I don't know. It pierces spell immunity and does magic damage. So because it does magic damage, the way magic resist works, you're doing almost nothing. Actually, I don't need to open those because that would answer my question. But because it does magical damage, it'll cancel regen, so that's nice. I think that's basically like what it was trying to account for. And the reason it gives the attack speed slow is pretty much strictly to help Lycan kill neutrals, to make him more tanky, because if you remove 40 attack speed off of a neutral, you're taking way less damage, and that doesn't scale across the game. So that just makes you a better jungler. It makes you a better jungler. It makes you a more defensive jungler, though, which isn't as good for Lycan, because the thing about Lycan that made him a good jungler initially wasn't that he was super tanky against creeps, but that he killed them super fast. So adding in an attack speed slow instead of critical strike is actually a pretty big nerf. The critical strike aura I think this was a pretty decent buff. at least to late game Lycan. But initially I think that's actually a nerf, because the majority of the damage is going to come out of you, and you basically just set, the way I played the hero, I'd put all of my units on an enemy and then single-handedly control the hero, like just control the hero himself, and then run him around in like an arc to try to hit the hero, which you can generally do because you move so much faster than anyone, even people with a haste rune. So if you, against someone that doesn't have boots especially, they're dead. And a 40% for 140, I don't think is as good as 30 a 40 for 140. I don't think it's as good as a 30 for 170. But it does feel a little bit more balanced to have the same critical strike chance at all levels. And just increase the damage. So increased attack range from 128 to 150. Doesn't affect much. All melee heroes got that, I think. Pretty sure all melee heroes have that, but it's kind of nice because you don't have to get as up close and personal with the tower, but it actually creates some pretty annoying micro situations because it means you have to put a little bit more effort into making sure your hero is the closest unit to the tower if you want your hero to tank tower shots. And generally speaking, there are a lot of situations where you do want to be tanking tower shots because you don't want the tower to kill your wolf, because the amount of health versus the amount of damage the wolf does is heavily skewed in favor of the damage it does. So you want to be tanking those tower hits almost exclusively. And you won't have to get the wolves to attack you to remove the aggro if you are just the closest unit to the tower when you're all attacking. So summon wolves, reduce base attack time, that was a nice buff. 7.0 was just generally really, really good to Lycan. And it added a lot of cool tricks that I was playing around with earlier in the year, but most of these have been nerfed to the point where they don't make a lot of sense. So the attack speed from Feral Impulse is kind of a big deal because the regen is nice and it lets you do things like buy an armlet and just never give a crap about the armlet. Like you're taking so little damage from having the armlet active on when you have the regen completely maxed, especially especially if you have what is it called, the level 15 talent. Okay, so it's just called plus 12 feral HP regen. Yeah, if you have that on, then you like don't take damage. You almost take no damage from the armlet. And if you have lifesteal above that, then you taking no damage from the armlet. In fact, you're healing faster than the armlet does damage to over time. But the problem with that is that that's really good for killing people because of the way crit works, and crit stacks with strength, which you have, or strength on Lycan, your primary attribute. So it stacks with strength, so it does more damage. So it makes you a better hero killer because you can synergize this HP regen with an item, but it makes you a worse tower killer because 30 attack speed is way better than 10 HP regen. And back in the day, you always had a Vlad, so you didn't give a shit about regen because you just healed anyway. I think this move was to point Lycan in the direction of things like Armlet, and more so in favor of the classic Medallion of Courage, which I actually never used in my golden days of playing Lycan. Like, I never used Medallion ever, and we're going to get deeper into that. But so Howl got a lot better, in my opinion, here, because the way Lycan works as a hero that destroys buildings, and this is getting into territory I've never talked about in my Lycan videos, which is how to play him in the late game. Like, I had a game recently, well, not recently, but a couple months ago, that went into my stream VODs. It's on YouTube, and I got a lot of people just being like, you suck, like, your early game was so bad, your items were so late, and I thought I'd lost the game, but I came back and won through ratting. And I've never really gone into detail on analysis of how this works. And the way that it works is, with Nature's Prophet, you try to control lane equilibrium until you have a clear opportunity to move in, attack, and then you use your items to get you out. Lycan is different because he doesn't have that global presence unless you have Boots of Travel, and if you do, it's not as good a global presence as Nature's Prophet. You don't have an ability that will cause the waves to push for you, but when you land that, you already have an escape built into you if you time your ultimate correctly because you have 650 move speed. You have to be continually stunned if they're going to kill you because you're a strength hero with a shitload of regen, and you just have them. You're tanky. You also probably have AC, so you have a lot of armor. But your burst damage is what makes Lycan a good rat, because those opportunities that Admiral Bulldog and those really, really, really good Nature's players are looking for are way more narrow for Lycan. You can look at if you can look at an opportunity to kill a tower with Nature, and you can cut that opportunity down to a quarter of what it is, give it to Lycan, and Lycan still says that's fine. And by opportunity, I mean the length of time that you have to fight the tower without worrying about dying. Because as soon as a hero shows up and stuns nature, if he has dust, like, you're dead. Like, you're dead. Like, it's a difficult... I think it's more difficult to pull off than Lycan. Versus Lycan, you need multiple heroes chain stunning you to kill you, especially if you've had a decent game. Lycan is also one of the heroes. He's not as good at it anymore. But if you go, if you have a Vlad's, a Necro 3, a Desolator, and an Assault Cuirass, you can 100% backdoor a tier 3 and kill it within like less than a minute. Like, a minute's actually a very long period of time. It's probably more like 30 seconds, 20 seconds, even in today's world. 7.01, they reduced his agility gain, and they just generally nerfed him a bit because he was really, really good again. And there's some minor nerfs up to 7.04 where they increased his strength by 3. And then they increased his crit damage, so now his crit is objectively better than it used to be. And because they nerfed his strength talent, they've upped his health. They've also upped his health bonus talent at level 10 because they're trying to get people to pick that or to provide incentive to, because otherwise you just always picked, sorry, not the strength talent, the damage talent level 10, because otherwise you would just pick the damage talent. And I still think the damage talent is better. The only reason you pick the strength talent or the health talent is if you're worried about getting killed and you think you can narrowly escape with that. Because you are a hit-and-run hero. Your goal is to get in, destroy you're a rat. You're a fast-moving rat, and you execute way more quickly than a Nature's Prophet. If I'm looking around a game that my team is losing, but I have decent items, and they still have tier 1s, I'll just go straight backdoor the tier 1s. Like, that will immediately give an injection of gold to my team and help them out. That will cause the enemy, that will piss off the enemy big time, that will put them on tilt, and not only give some morale, but some actual money to my team. And a bigger chunk of money to me, hopefully. So, 7.06 increased his strength gain from 3 to 3.3. He's one of the highest strength gain heroes in the game right now. But they reduced his base regen to account for this. But I think this was the patch where they changed the way strength regen works, so that doesn't really change anything. Regardless, 0.25 is nothing. Level 15 talent replaced 25-second respawn with 12 feral impulse health regen. This just further pushes us in the direction of an armlet, and it also pushes us in favor of you being a fighter, not a rat. And I think a lot of these are trying to make Lycan they're trying to force you to go down further into, I am absolutely a rat this game, or I'm absolutely a right-click fighter this game. Even if you're a right-click fighter, you still kill buildings pretty quickly, but I think they're trying to point him in the direction of a fighter, even though I strongly don't like playing him like that. Now we're going to talk about item changes, because arguably these are more important, or at least as important. Cumulatively, these are way more important than the changes to Lycan, but one by one we'll talk about them, and we'll talk about creeps. So, way back when, Vlad's aura now stacks with Assault aura, so you have a lot of armor starting at 6.79, which is, again, when I picked him up seriously. So 6.84 kind of reworked it a bit. That's when we got rid of the old Ring of Regen recipe. That's when the cost went up from 2075 to 2325. Originally, I was talking to Microsoft about this, and he kind of liked it because when you buy a Vlad's on Lycan, you don't get rid of it. You don't get rid of it unless you have like literally infinite gold. The game's got to be going on for an hour and a half. Like, it is the last of your early items that you get rid of, and in an hour-long game, I still don't like getting rid of it if I'm playing the rat. And if I'm playing the rat, I almost certainly won't, because it gives a percent-based bonus to my damage and my creeps. And on Lycan, it's one of the best value items in the game, but it's fallen out of favor in favor of Armlet because of what I've already talked about. So overall, the cost of it it's been tweaked. It's down to $22.75 now. It's still a good bit more expensive than it used to be, and because the jungle's not as valuable as it used to be to Lycan and heroes like him, it takes you longer to get this item. However, when I'm going back and tinkering with it, I've been experimenting with Vlad's a lot lately, and I miss the item a lot. I obviously miss it, but I'm probably going to start looking towards Vlad's again. And if you've been following me for a long time, that's going to make you smile. So they increased the bounty on the Necro Archers. I think the big the big change. Where is the big change here? So in 6.84, they increased the health and the damage of the Necronomicons, and they changed Last Will's damage from pure to magical. I don't know if that pierces BKB. Does it pierce BKB? It does not pierce BKB, so I think that's probably why they did that. So they increased the bounty on them a good bit, because 6.80, remember when Lycan was really strong and you always just built Necro no matter what. They reduced the armor to 4 on each level from 6, 8, 10, so that was a pretty big hit. But again, with Lycan having AC and Vlad's for his standard build, they had massive amounts of armor anyway, so you didn't care even if they were down to 4. Increase the gold bounty. They've been buffing the whole set of units more and more. They've increased the duration pretty consistently. The duration has gone from 40 to 50 seconds, and the cooldown went from 95 to 90 seconds. Sorry, that was probably really loud and echoey. Cooldown. So they increased the cooldown from 80 to 95 in 6.80, and this was actually, like, 6.80 was the heyday of my Lycan, but this was still a pretty big hit. And the reason they did this was because a lot of heroes other than Lycan weren't picking him. So overall, these guys didn't get nerfed too hard, and with the cooldown down to 90, increasing the duration to 50, this follows a similar pattern to Shadowblade. So Shadowblade originally had a relatively short duration with a relatively short cooldown, then the cooldown got increased to nerf it, then they increased the duration to buff it. So you have more time to set up, but the idea is to make the item still just as good, but you have to put more thought into using it because you have that longer cooldown despite the longer length. The longer cooldown hurts a lot, but Necronomicon overall has remained a very good item on Lycan. If you're ratting. So Medallion of Courage is one I'm not going to spend too much time on because I really don't care about the item. I never used it when I was really playing the hero a lot, despite the fact that it was really trendy in the pro scene. One of the reasons people build it is because back when it gave full value armor on Roshan, so -7 armor, you could cut down Rosh super quick. And I feel like all of the changes to Rosh have been pretty big nerfs, not only to Lycan but to Ursa, and I feel like Lycan might have deserved him because Lycan was a really good hero. Ursa hasn't been that good in years. I don't like those changes to Rosh. But let's move to Solar Crest, and then we'll talk more about the Rosh changes because I forgot to bring that one up, and that's also a pretty big one. All right, we're already at 22 minutes. So on Rosh, they reduced evasion from 30 to 25%. Wait a minute. Where are we? Shrine. What is? Oh, okay. We're talking about Solar Crest. I was like, Roshan had evasion. So Solar Crest was created in 6.84, and I really didn't care about it too much. But they increased the armor bonus and reduction in patch 7.02 from 10 to 12, and they brought this back down to 10. And during 7.02, if you combine this item with an armlet on Lycan in the early and mid game, you'll just like 2-hit heroes. You'll fucking run down supports in 2 hits. And they've also reduced the evasion pretty substantially. The original evasion was 30, and it's been reduced to 25%. And I don't think that this item was necessarily intended. Like, I don't think the nerfs to this item were intended directly to hurt Lycan. I could be wrong on that. They might have been specifically for him. But they make him a lot worse because that 12 to 10 armor on enemy heroes is fair, but if they could make it do, like, I would be happy if they made it do -8 armor to heroes and -14 to creeps, because the purpose, like, one of the primary purposes of getting this item is that now you never worry about ancients because you cut through them so quickly. Like, you can kill the ancients anyway, but the speed at which Lycan can kill ancient camps is a major factor in how good he is in the current patch, because he's one of the only heroes that can exclusively bounce back and forth between ancients. If he bounces back and forth between ancients and cuts the mid creep wave, he can stack himself up like 600 or 700 GPM just doing that, grabbing bounty runes and grabbing the occasional hard camp. Like, you can farm so quickly when he's good on that. And this is one of the reasons that, like, I don't like the item on Lycan anymore for this reason, because it's just not as efficient as it used to be. But let's talk a little bit about Rosh. So this is a big part of how I play the hero now. They increased him. They made him harder to kill. They made him hit harder. They made it so slows on him were less effective. Which slows on him being less effective is also a big deal for Lycan because of the fact that he has cripple on his wolves. So when Lycan got cripple on his wolves, he could still be an early Rosher. The thing that made Rosh horrible was they basically cut out so 750 plus 20 per minute. So back in the day, you'd start fighting him at 7 and kill him at 9. So that's 9 times 2. That's 180 experience onto 750. You're below 1,000 experience, versus before it was 1,789. Before it was guaranteed going from level 7 to level 9 if you had a little bit into level 7. Now you're not getting that. You're not getting anywhere near that, which is a big hit. Yes, that's still a big bonus, but because he's also tankier, it takes you longer to kill him. So the investment of your time and risk is way bigger than it used to be, and your reward is essentially half of what it used to be. In terms of gold, did they change gold that patch? I don't think they changed gold that patch. So because of the fact that his team bounty is also lower too, so 50 gold less than what it used to give, and bigger armor gain per interval. They increased the cheese drops on the second death instead of third. So what this is doing is promoting team play. But for a hero like Lycan, this is a massive hit, because you can't bank on that to get you a springboard and go from having an okay lead to being big boy lead. And then you do that, then you jump from Ancients back and forth until you're level 11. Now it would be level 12. And suddenly you're level 12. Unless the enemy team has been completely rolling you, you're now the biggest dog on the map by a big margin. And if the enemy team is rolling you, you can just cut by one of the tier 1s and knock that down, which will help even out. Knocking down tier 1s is a big factor in helping even out the scoreboard, and it's something you can do very easily to promote equality. But I think the Rosh nerf is one of the biggest nerfs in the game for Lycan. Assault Caress I didn't want to touch on too much because it's pretty straightforward. But at 6.72 they reduced the recipe cost, which was nice. And in 6.79 reducing the Hyperstone cost was pretty awesome. Hyperstone had been 2,100. I think it was actually 2,200 at some point. But it was 2,100 for as long as I could remember, and they changed it to, it's 2,300 back in 6.49. So they reduced the cost down to 2,000, which was a nice buff. Not as big of a buff, because by the time you're getting an AC, Lycan's just farming out of control anyway, so you don't really care. But remember, with the way that you build Lycan, you're essentially trying to get a list of items when you're playing him old school, when you were playing him in this style, and I mean, I kind of still look at him this way. But when you want to hit that list as fast as possible, because that's when you hit your stride, and if you hit that stride, the later you hit the stride, the harder the game is. And if you hit that stride early enough, the game is over. He's basically a timer, and if you survive that timer, then you will have answers for him. So let's talk a little bit about neutrals. Ancient neutrals are a big issue. So like, we can talk about the most recent things, like the 6.06 creeps now spawn again every minute, but they give 20% less golden experience. This is a big nerf to Lycan because of the fact that he's good at killing camps, but not that good. So he's not going to be a jungler that can clear the whole jungle back to back like an Enigma can. He's a jungler that really liked that 20%, and this was overall a pretty big hit to him. This was a hit that's big enough to make you go consider killing the small camp, because the small camp got that 8% buff, which is actually not listed here, surprisingly. Another thing, and this might be the biggest nerfs around, I think, are the buffs to neutrals. So the health aura on the Golem was a really big one, which is why I liked Solar Crest earlier in the year. But the biggest nerf are the Ancient Dragons. So the Ancient Dragons I don't think have any magic resist at all. or not the ancient dragons, the prowlers. The prowler camp, they have magic resist. They have 0 magic resist, so they're really good at being killed by casters. And so, like, Tinker just absolutely loves these guys. He tears through them like tissue paper. But the problem is, Desecrate reduces your armor by 50%, your base physical armor by 50. So in the early game, it's really, really, really good against you, and it does 200 physical damage against you. And it's also, I don't know if the damage, does the damage, I don't know, I think the damage is done after you get the debuff, so it does even more damage, but you get that, and then you get the root, which is physical damage of 75 per second for 2 seconds, so 150 physical damage, but during those 2 seconds, you also can't hit. And because you can't hit, you're not healing if you have lifesteal, and you have 2 seconds of time that you're just straight up losing, which makes the camp harder to stack, because if you get hit with this, you say goodbye to your stack. This is probably the biggest change to neutrals other than Roche that has affected my farming in the game, that and the minute thing. But the minute thing is one of those ones where you just white knuckle it, and then you get through that early game, and you're like, everything's fine now because you're Lycan. But these guys will haunt you for a very large portion of the game. And they don't, they give the least experience of all of the creep camps, and a moderate amount of gold. Like, the dragon camp is basically a gift at this point. Even though the dragon has way more health, these guys just do so much damage. I hate fighting against them. It's like, there have been games where I've come up to the ancient camp, and I've been like a third health, seen that, and been like, alright, I have to shrine now, or I'm just going to jungle like a hard camp or 2 until I'm healed up again. Buildings, this is another thing that's made Lycan a little bit different. So, they removed a lot of bounties from them. Illusions got nerfed, that doesn't really affect Lycan. The biggest change for Lycan, when did this happen? I think it was following the Death Ball patch. So, when you killed a tier 1, you got your glyph refreshed. That was a massive nerf, because back in the day, you could just kill the tier 1, walk up to the tier 2, and if one person came to stop you, you killed them, and then you killed the tower. If no one came to stop you, you got a tier 2. Now you can still do this, but you now have it's now a much bigger pain in the ass. Also, tier 2s do more damage, which is a big deal, because tier 2s are sort of on the fence. So, like, tier 2s they're one that if you get them, like, sub 15 minutes, if you get a tier 2 or 2 of them, I've probably had 100 games where I have, at around 10 minutes, killed a tier 1 and then casually walked up and killed a tier 2. And if you kill a tier 2 at, like, 12 minutes, and the whole lane's just cut open like that, like, it's not just strategically bad, but it pisses the hell off of the enemy team. It's very demoralizing to lose both of those towers. You lose a lot of vision, you lose a lot of map presence, you lose a huge amount of control over the map. And that's one of the things that makes knocking down the outer towers so valuable, because even though Lycan is a hero that's really just trying to, like, break into the cookie jar and just take all the Raxes, when you're taking those outer towers, you are systematically, even if your allies don't realize it, even if the enemy team doesn't realize it because you're like 2k MMR or something, you are taking away vision. You are making them uncomfortable, and if they're not uncomfortable, then you're setting yourself up for good and obvious plays to kill them. So you're helping your team drastically by cutting those outer towers. Now, these tower armor bonuses are a big deal because they basically make it so it's incentivizing Lycan to fight more. I think a lot of this patch, as I previously said, are incentivizing fighting for Lycan. So back in the day, if there's like one hero, like a Rubik, like running around circles, like, yeah, there's a Lycan, you didn't run after him unless he came up to you and started to harass you and you had to get rid of him. You could just focus on the tower. Nowadays, if he shows up, because of that armor bonus, you just tear into him and kill him. You need to kill him because you need to get that armor bonus down. So this is, I mean, I skipped over a good chunk of stuff here. Mostly, oh, and remember tier 1s don't have backdoor protection, so you can just cut them down like nothing all the time. But considering this video's gone on for 35 minutes, and I really hate recording long videos because the viewership's generally bad, I'm gonna cut it off here. The next video will be talking more. I mean, my next video will be a hero guide, and it'll probably be a few hero guides for our next Lycan video. But this is once or twice a week. I'm going to make a video like this, and I'm trying to have a Lycan guide out before the end of the international, which is in like August 12th. So something along those lines is what I'm thinking of. Either way, you'll be getting updates from me in this form. One thing that I do want to stress that's been a nice buff to Lycan is the Blightstone, or I sometimes call it the Crimson Ore, but it's the Blightstone, and it's the item that replaced the Desolator recipe. It's 300 gold, or 275, something like that, and it gives you a -2 armor orb effect. Well, it actually isn't an orb. It's not a unique attack modifier anymore, but it puts a debuff on the enemy that gives you -2 armor. It actually stacks with Solar Crest and Medallion of Courage. So even though I don't want to build a Solar Crest, 300 gold is not a lot of money to get -2 armor, especially in the early game when I want to kill buildings and just do it as quickly as possible. So I think this is a good place to stop for now. I know that there are probably a lot of things that I went over too quickly or too briefly and didn't touch on in enough detail. And if you have questions about those things, leave questions in the comments of this video, and I will do my best to answer them. So thanks for watching, and have a wonderful day. Hey y'all, Esports Money's here, and here's my face. If you enjoyed that content, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more content from me. And if you want to support the channel further, you can check out the Amazon affiliate links in the video description to buy all of the computer hardware that I own and use on a regular basis. And there's also an Amazon Prime referral link, so if you do not have Amazon Prime and are considering getting it, you can use that link. It costs you no additional money and helps support the channel. So thanks a lot, and see y'all around.